It was just 1 year ago, one summer ago, that we were talking a lot about the Jets. The Jets, they look like they could absolutely be a Stanley Cup champion. And now here we are 12 months later. And it's different than what happened with the Senators when they went from virtually Stanley Cup finals to, becoming a lottery team. It's a completely different situation. And yet, there are some similarities in that this roster doesn't really resemble a contending roster right now. So in limbo, we have Laine, Connor, and Byfuglien. We're waiting to see what Byfuglien's going to do. And then there's a lot of talk about if Byfuglien does retire, then maybe you move somebody in order to make up for the loss on the blue line. Because this blue line, it's questionable. It is a questionable blue line, and that's me putting it as best as I can. Now up front, Andrew Kopp had a chance to play with Scheifele and Wheeler and seemed to do well. So let's just say that's where you go with your first line. And Ehlers, Little, and Roslovic as your second line. Let's just say that's your top six. You lose a lot. You lose a lot in going from Connor and Laine to Roslovic and Kopp. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Kopp or Roslovic, but they're not Laine goal-scoring wise, or Connor is an all-around player. That would make the third line, I don't know. Perreault and Lowry, yes. Does Bork get that chance? Chibisov has had a pretty good camp, and he's 26 years of age, so not a kid and might fit in a little bit quicker. Has some energy. I don't think there's a lot of offensive upside there, but maybe he gets a shot at that spot. Does Mason Appleton get a better spot? And does Vesalainen end up factoring into this? Honestly, if you're Cheveldayoff, your best case scenario here is that Vesalainen somehow slips in as that first line left winger. Kopp slides back down to a more familiar bottom six role, and your team just kind of figures itself out there. And then you have Luoto, who's had a decent camp as well and pretty good preseason games. And Logan Shaw's there as a guy who's had NHL experience, not a rookie, not a kid. There's a lot of forwards here, and yet without Connor and Laine, does this forward group make the playoffs? How long can this go? And then the question becomes one of, we're 9 days away from the season. So as I'm recording this, 9 days away from the season, and the longer we go into camp and into preseason, the longer it's going to take these guys to get into game shape. The longer it's going to take them to catch up with everybody else. Now on the blue line, without Byfuglien, it is a massive difference. Morrissey, Kulikov, Beaulieu, Heinola, Logan Stanley, Boteto, they're all listed as left defensemen on Cap Friendly. On the right side, Niku, Pionk, Pullman, and Luke Green shows up as a right defenseman. Odds are they move somebody that's currently listed as a left-handed defenseman over to the right side. It's not that unusual. However, this blue line, you struggle to find upside here that means playoffs now. Samu Niku, I like him a lot. Or Sami Niku, I should say. I like him a lot. And Ville Heinolas looked good. He looked good in last night's game as well. But, the overall picture is still one of uncertainty. And for a Winnipeg team that, again, and people will say, well, they've got time. There's time. They can still, they get this all together. They've got time. Blake Wheeler's in his 30s. So that main cog in the offense, captain, face of the franchise, he might never get better than he is right now. And yes, there's a lot of other good young players in this roster. And I know there's a lot of people who want to see Brian Little out of there. And they've tried. They tried with Stastny. Couldn't talk him into sticking around. They tried with Hayes. Couldn't talk him into sticking around at a cap hit that they were comfortable with. Winnipeg knows they need to beef up their second-line center position. They haven't been able to do it. Their goaltending, that's solid. You've got Hellebuck. You've got Brossoit. But when you look at the exits, you've already lost Trouba, Myers, and Sherratt off that blue line. That's 3 of their top 6 from last year. Pionk comes in to replace him. And again, Pionk is not a replacement for Trouba, doesn't play Trouba's game. And if they overplay Pionk, they're going to end up in a situation with like the Rangers did. We look at Pionk and how people talk about his he's a lousy defenseman, he's terrible. What it reminds me of is Ben Hutton in Vancouver, where overplayed equals poor play. If he's utilized correctly, he'll play well. And I get that feeling with Pionk as well, that his numbers will get better as long as he's properly deployed by the Jets. Without Byfuglien, with the loss of Trouba, Myers, and Sherratt in the offseason, guys like him are going to get overplayed. And that's where things get tricky. The longer this goes, the trickier it gets. And I guess the question I have is, if you're a Jets fan and you're looking at this roster, and again, I'm not saying these are the lines at all, because everything's going to be in a blender while you've got Connor and Laine out while they're trying to figure out exactly where that top six is going to lie. Do you look at this Jets team right now, and with the news about Byfuglien potentially retiring, and with the current holdouts, does this change your expectation for this year? Or were you already expecting a down year? Or do you think, you know what? With Hellebuck and Brossoit, with Maurice behind the net, or behind the bench, we believe in this team. And $23 million is their current cap space with Byfuglien out of there. If Byfuglien does retire and his cap hit comes off the books, it does allow for cap space. The trick is, you can get tons of cap space and not have a very good team. And that's where it gets tricky for the Jets, is they might have a lot of cap space, they can sign Laine and Connor and not worry about it, and then their blue line just isn't any good. That's a realistic scenario that I don't think anybody would be happy with. There are contracts you can move if you need to. We've talked about this during the summer, where there are a couple of veterans that make decent money that may very well find themselves off the team once Laine and Connor are signed. That gets trickier as we get into the season. As much as people have talked about potentially there being an offer sheet for Connor or Laine as the season starts, because everybody's got all their rosters set and they know their budgets, it gets trickier for the Jets. Let's just say that Laine and Connor signed for whatever, and Byfuglien comes back and they've got a full roster, but now let's say they want to move Perreault. And what if the teams that might want Perreault don't have the cap space to take him on, and they don't feel like disrupting their roster for him? And the ones that have the cap space aren't really all that interested because they're not in a position where bringing in Perreault makes any sense. During the summer, early in the summer, it might have been easier to do than it will be during the season. Kevin Cheveldayoff has a very big task ahead of him. And the longer this goes, the trickier it gets. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about the state of the Jets. Do you think we get Connor and Laine signed over the next few days, over the next week, and it's all forgotten? And what of the Byfuglien situation as well? That totally changes their blue line. It pulls something out of their lineup that they had already lost with Trouba, Myers, Sherratt. You lose some of that physicality off the blue line. With Byfuglien, this is a completely different team. With Byfuglien gone, it is a completely different team, and I would argue it is easier to keep Heinola in the lineup. Might be easier to keep Stanley around as well. He's a big guy. So you need some of that on the blue line, and this could be kind of a soft team to play against all of a sudden. But, that's also with the loss of Tanev, who, of course, was a fourth line forward. His contract may very well look bad when you look at it from the point of view of how much money they're spending a year in Pittsburgh to have him, but losing Tanev off that fourth line hurts Winnipeg. But we'll see. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. I just thought this would be kind of an interesting thing to look at, because of all of the teams right now dealing with contract situations, and definitely Colorado's in that situation as well, you get the feeling that Winnipeg has gone from contending team, top team, potentially the first Canadian team to win a Stanley Cup since 1993, and now you could argue that since they're in the Central Division, they might miss the playoffs. You got Colorado, you got Nashville, you got Dallas, St. Louis. That's 4 right there. I didn't even get into Chicago, who could very well be improved this year by adding Leonard. So if something happens with Crawford and he gets hurt, they're fine in net. They've got Delia as their number 3. And Also Minnesota. Minnesota kind of wearing it as a badge of honor, the fact that nobody's picking them to make the playoffs and coming into the season with a chip on their shoulder. Could we see the Winnipeg Jets tumble right out of the playoffs? And let me know how you guys feel about this. And a final question. Is there any way Kevin Cheveldayoff could have headed this off? Or is this just something we're going to see where if you have a team of a lot of young kids that are going to be restricted free agents that are going to want a big raise, this is kind of how things are going to work out. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always, and I'll talk to you again soon.